under Edgar Lungu, given Lubinda, described the court's decision as merely an academic exercise and expressed confidence in Lungu's candidacy, urging PF members to remain steadfast and view the ruling as inconsequential. He has further accused the ruling United Party for National Development of employing lies and manipulative tactics to return power, calling on Zambians to reject the ruling party. Now, the Constitutional Court recently ruled that Lungu's tenure from January 25th of 2015 to September 13th of 2016, along with his subsequent term of September 13th, 2016 to August of 2021, constitutes 2 full presidential terms, thereby disqualifying him from seeking another term of office. The judgment, delivered unanimously by a 7-member panel, was based on the interpretation of sections of the Presidential and Parliamentary Elections Act, as well as constitutional provisions. With this latest development, the question is, how does the future of the former president and the former ruling party, the PF, look like? The PF Vice President Given Lubinda is my guest on Costa this evening. We break down the Concord ruling and what the next plan B is for the PF. Join me after this. Good evening. Thank you so much for having the pleasure to join us. If you're able to watch us on DSTV's channel 271, it's channel 20 on GoTV. Remember, we're streaming live on our Facebook page. It's Diamond TV Online, as well as Diamond Media Zambia on YouTube. We are on Diamond TV Zambia. My name is Costa Mwansa. This is Costa. My guest, Given Lubinda, the Vice President under the Edgar Lungu-led PF. Always a pleasure to have you. Good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening. It's really a pleasure to be back on Costa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me, and good evening, viewers.
Now, let's before we get into the Concord ruling, I was just asking you earlier that there's just so much that has been happening within the former ruling party in terms of court cases, injunctions, and this change of leadership. Today you have this, tomorrow you hear this. What is exactly your substantive position?
I am Vice President of the Patriotic Front. That's my substantive position. And
you refuse to be called a faction?
I refuse.
Part of the PF. There's no faction.
There's no faction to be referred to. If there is any part of the Patriotic Front which could be referred to as a faction, it is that which Hakainde Hichilema is controlling.
Irregardless of whatever is before the courts?
Irrespective of what is before the courts. That part of the name of the Patriotic Front, which is under Hakainde's control, that is the faction. Otherwise, the Patriotic Front remains completely united under Edgar Lungu and the Central Committee.
We'll get back to, obviously, what the legal stakes or the future of the PF look like. But let's quickly get to the elephant in the room, the issue of last week's, judgment. The Constitutional Court delivering a 62-page, judgment that declared Edgar Lungu ineligible to contest the 2026 election and further elections. Despite this ruling, you held a reaction, press briefing right after, and you still insist that, as far as you are concerned, this judgment is an academic exercise, it's inconsequential, and Edgar will be on the ballot. Why do you refuse to respect the court's judgment?
Let's put this in context. We did have a press briefing prior to the ruling. On Monday the 10th, I had a press briefing. I had a meeting with members of the Central Committee, after which I addressed the press. And speaking on behalf of the party, I did indicate that that matter that was brought before the court by Chizombwe is just opening a Pandora box. I also did indicate that unfortunately the lid of that Pandora box was thrown down the Vic Falls by the people who chose to go to court with the same facts that had graced the court 3 times previously. So it was not a surprise to us that the ruling went the way it did. The only interesting thing was that the judges went on a voyage like Vasco da Gama, went on a voyage of many countries, trying to compare and contrast the Constitutional Court Acts of other countries to the Constitutional Court Act of Zambia. And they were so deliberate as to cite countries where their Constitutional Courts Acts allow the court to revisit their decisions. And they used that as a justification for them to revisit the decision that they had arrived at 3 times previously. So this is the reason why we said this was opening a Pandora box, because now they have exposed themselves. When the judiciary came up with the Constitutional Court Act of Zambia, they decided that they would not give that court the power to revisit their decisions. There was a reason behind that. And the court doesn't have the power to go out and say, because South Africa has this provision, therefore we're also going to donate to ourselves that decision. They don't have that power. The fact that they abused that position now has opened that court for further litigation.
Before we get, and I'll be very interested for you this evening to just basically explain to us further what that Pandora box to further litigation is and whether you'll be taking it up. But for the sake of the viewers' understanding, if we could just display, on the screen, part of that judgment and in about 8.0. And what you're referring to, the court used the principle of what they said per incuriam, which is the power by the court to correct its past errors or omission or statutory provision. They said that the principle of stare decisis, which is obviously the fact that you uphold your own ruling, is not absolute. The court can depart from it in an exception to the legal principle of stare decisis. And like you're saying, they referred to Commonwealth practice. They went as far as looking at South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Zimbabwe, and even cases in the USA, for example, the Roe versus Wade. And I just want to get very quickly where they quote just there. If we can get it on the Zambian position, they quote Article 125, Subarticle 3 of the Constitution, which states that the Supreme Court is bound by its decision except in the interest of justice or development of jurisprudence, and no provision of the Concord was given at the time when the Supreme Court would depart from this. But they further give, case precedents in cases like Finsbury Investments versus the Ventrigliers, and they say departure must only be in exceptional cases and in compelling circumstances. So they state here, and I'll just like to quote, that the aspect of per incuriam and why they are basically revisiting this particular matter, I just want to go to the specific provisions, if you may allow me. If I may quote from 8.15, considering the above authorities, the authorities that they gave examples from the US, Nigeria, South Africa, it is clear that apex courts in common law and other jurisdictions enjoy unfettered inherent power to review or depart from their previous decisions in exceptional circumstances. The courts have, however, been careful to state that they will only review or depart from their previous decisions in exceptional and compelling circumstances so as to meet the ends of justice as where the previous decisions were clearly wrong. This is a delicate balance for the courts between the need for finality in litigation and the overriding duty of the court to dispense justice where circumstances so demand. They further say, there is no legal provision which divests this court of its inherent jurisdiction to depart from a previous decision in exceptional circumstances. It is thus our position that whereas this court, as the guardian of the letter, spirit and values of the Constitution, has to be circumspect as far as adherence to a deviation from its previous decisions is concerned, it shall not hesitate to depart from its previous decision where it is satisfied that the decision is clearly wrong or where the interest of justice demands that to be done. In our considered view, departure from precedent must, however, only be taken in the most exceptional circumstances. We therefore find the argument that this court has no power to review or depart from its previous decisions fundamentally flawed. In effect, it would entail the court divesting itself of powers that flow from its standing as an apex court.
Read 8.16 again for the sake of the viewers.
8.16. Yep. There is no legal provision which divests this court of its inherent jurisdiction to depart from a previous decision in exceptional circumstances.
Precisely. There is no position, there is no legal provision for that court. That legal provision exists in the Supreme Court Act. Why did the formulators of the law choose that they will vest the Supreme Court with that power and not the Constitutional Court?
Was it at the time that we did not have the Court? Because that is what they state here.
But when the Court was established, the Constitutional Court Act was also promulgated. Had the formulators of the law wanted that the Court should have the same power as the Supreme Court to revisit its decisions, that should have been provided. But it wasn't. Secondly, they themselves said, we think we must have this power because we're the apex court on constitutional matters. Therefore, we think we can donate to ourselves this power. That's wrong. Third, Costa, they also said, even in the Supreme Court, which is given that power, they only exercise it under very extreme circumstances.
Compelling or exceptional.
And they use the word exceptional circumstance. Go through the whole of that judgment, 62 pages. Where do they point at and say, this is the reason, this is the special circumstance?
I was going to ask really that question to say...
And further to that, when they use the term per incuriam, they are saying that we are donating to ourselves this power because we think that the decisions that were made in the past over this matter were made by mistake, by error. That is what per incuriam means.
That's what it means.
Right?
And
now, the question that begs an answer, I'm sure that many viewers would be asking, if they say that 3 times that same court made a mistake, 3 times, what makes this 4th decision to be the right one?
So I'll quote, and these are the questions we need to unpack this evening. 8.6, whether this court can depart from its previous decisions. The issues and arguments raised by the parties have invariably compelled us to consider the question whether this court can depart from its previous decisions. It was submitted by the petitioner that there are instances in which the court may forget or omit a statutory provision or point of law when rendering judgment, that in such circumstances the court has the power to correct these errors through the principle of per incuriam.
Right.
In short, just before you come, in short, they're saying in their previous ruling, they could have either forgotten, omitted a statutory provision, or rendered a judgment with a mistake.
So, did they indicate which statutory provision was omitted in those 3 cases? Did they indicate what mistake was made? No, they were quiet about that. They say we are going to do this, we're going to depart from this because there are exceptional circumstances. And they themselves say to correct an error, or because a particular statutory provision was omitted when they were arriving at the decision. But they don't say that, look, we are now revisiting because in this judgment, this statutory provision was omitted, or this mistake was made, one of the parties was not heard. This is the reason we're revisiting it. They don't say that. So they cannot just use words.
So when you question to say, I think the issues we need to look at here, was the Chizombe matter or petition exceptional or compelling enough that it needs to have the case reopened? And it comes to the question of now the res judicata. issue, that the respondents said this matter has already been decided upon. But they, if we go into 8.22, they again say, I'll just quote 8.22 there, where they, if I may just, 8.22, the petitioner and the third respondent, however, argued that this matter is not res judicata, as this case is sui generis. It was submitted that the action has brought out a context that has never been determined by this court. This is what they're saying, that this new petition has brought out a matter that has never been determined by this court. That is the effect of sections 2 and 7 of the Act, as read with the repealed Article 35 of the Constitution.
Yeah, now what is that context which was not brought in the previous 3 cases? What is it? Do they say it? Well, and you know, this judgment just makes funny reading. It makes very funny reading, because there's a lot of wordsmithing in this. Wordsmithing without even saying what you want to say. Okay? On one hand, you say that this matter is sui generis, meaning it's new. And yet your decision is a decision challenging previous decisions. What is sui generis about it? What is new about it? The 3 previous judgments of the Concord said Edgar Lungu is eligible to contest elections. Okay? He was eligible in 2021. He contested elections and lost. Are you telling me that it's written somewhere in the Constitution that a person who loses an election is not eligible to stand in the next?
But they go further in saying, in light of the foregoing authorities, we are of the firm view that the doctrine of res judicata is not an absolute principle. It is subject to exceptions which, relevant to the present petition, as shall be determined in due course, include circumstances where the previous decisions were made paying curiam. So the court is admitting that they made mistakes in their previous.
What mistake is it?
Did they indicate in circumstances of either omission, statutory provision?
Yes, I hear that. The fact that they are saying in special circumstances we want to donate to ourselves the power to revisit our decision, they must clarify to us what is that special circumstance. What is that mistake? They should have told us that in the 3 previous judgments we omitted this law or we made this mistake. But they are not stating that.
So other schools of thought...
In addition to that, Mr. Mwansa, in addition to that, let me clarify that when they say that this matter is new, they should have also told us that our judgment is different. But the judgment that they came up with went to the very core of the previous 3 judgments. And if you read the judgment in the Resource Foundation matter, what did the Concord say? They said, we are not going to entertain this matter any further because it has graced this court 3 times. Okay? And you know, they can come up with whatever they want. They can say we can revisit our decision, that stare decisis is not an absolute principle. But it is not an absolute principle when the law allows you, not when it doesn't allow you.
Have they acted out revise?
Yes, they have.
In this particular matter?
They have.
Because
they themselves said at 8.16, they said there is no provision in the law to allow us to revisit.
They are claiming,
that's why we're going on Vasco da Gama
voyage. They are claiming exceptional and compelling circumstances.
But what are the exceptional circumstances? Tell me.
You question?
The only exceptional circumstance, Mr. Mwansa, are the change of faces of judges.
We'll be getting to that. But maybe the other school of thought and argument, Honorable Lubinda, is that you asked a question, what is new about this matter? Or have they stated what was the mistake in the previous judgments? I think it's very clear that the mistake now is that in the previous rulings, Edgar Lungu was said to be eligible. And in this particular ruling, he's ineligible. So in short, they're saying they made a mistake for having said he wasn't eligible.
No. What they should,
he was eligible, rather.
No, what they should be saying is that we arrived at this decision because of this mistake. They cannot go to the judgment and say the judgment was out of error. What is the error that led to that judgment?
They've vacated the three previous rulings.
But they must show you, Mr. Mwansa, they are duty-bound to show Zambians that, look, in the three previous cases, we omitted this law, we didn't consider this law. In the three previous cases, there was one party who was not heard, who is now being heard. Edgar Lungu was not brought. Now he has been brought. They must show us what caused them to make that judgment, which now they are finding to be a judgment paying curiam. They must show the mistake.
What makes this particular recent ruling interesting for Zambia and our political trajectory, Honorable Lubinda, is whether you as politicians use the judiciary, which people expect to be autonomous and independent, to weaponize or really abuse it to the effect of political opponents, regardless of, especially those in the opposition. Because there's a school of thought, you know, that when the PF was in power, the John Sangwa, the Legal Resource Foundation, the Bumpy Kapalasa case, they held the view that President Lungu, even before 2021, was not eligible, according to the Constitution and Articles 1063 and Articles 1066 and so on. In the rulings, we were told he was eligible on the basis that he did not complete a full term as of the 2015 to 2016 term. And so because it was a court precedence, it became, case law. But there was a view of thought that he was not eligible. And now the court has overturned this to say, this is even where it confuses people a lot. I hear people asking this question: how is it that in this judgment, the court is telling us that Edgar Lungu was eligible in 2021 and is not eligible in 2026 and future elections? What would have happened if he won the 2021 elections?
I wouldn't frown at the people asking that question, because that's a very intelligent question to ask. It's a very important question to ask. Why are you splitting hairs? That's the question. Why is the court splitting hairs? If indeed he was qualified in 2021, but like I asked you, do they have a law they can cite which says a person who loses an election will not be qualified to contest the next? There is no such provision.
Yeah, this is what
now,
I'm asking.
in one breath, they are saying he was eligible.
But this is why I'm asking.
But now he's not.
If you remember my earlier question, this is why I'm asking that it favored you in the PF when you were in power then, that others accused you of manipulating the judges who were appointed by Edgar then to rule in his favor when in fact he had twice held office.
These 7 who sat now are sitting under whose watch? Hakainde's watch.
Yes.
And they arrived at the same decision that the others arrived at, that he was eligible in 2021. There's no difference.
But according
let's make it
to
clear.
the 3 cases,
Yes. He was
the issue
was
that
eligible.
he had twice held office.
But he was eligible. That was the holding of the court on 3 occasions, that he was eligible. These 7 also said he was eligible in 2021, but no, he's not eligible in 2026.
And this
What's
is,
an absurdity?
and hence my question, that are you, as the powers that be, and we've been at this, you were Justice Minister, have we finally managed to secure tenure and autonomy of the judiciary? Because it seems they're being used to weaponize for political scores.
I think that is happening now. It didn't happen during my time as Minister of Justice. You never heard of me going into court when there was a political matter.
Of course, we're not accusing you.
No,
I'm generally speaking about the fact that...
I'm comparing. You want me to compare. Now, I've told you that 3 times during our rule, this particular matter went to court. 3 times. Had we weaponized the judiciary, we would have said 1 is enough, 2 is enough. But we still said go, even a 3rd time, until the court itself said, no, we are getting tired of this matter. We don't want it to grace the court anymore. The 4th time the matter goes into court, and we again argue, people on behalf of Edgar Lungu argue and say this is against the principle of res judicata. This matter has been rested.
Which is not an absolute.
Huh? It is an absolute for as long as it is not provided for in the law. It is not an absolute for the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is bound by the Supreme Court Act They can look at their act and it tells them in exceptional circumstances you can revisit. But the Constitutional Court doesn't have that power.
It doesn't have, but in arriving at this decision, like is the principle, that is why they are quoting other case law in other jurisdictions, especially within just a minute, yes, within the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Again, my question would be not just specific to the Edgar Chagwa Lungu case. The argument is courts, whether they're a court of finality like the Constitutional Court, which is the final arbiter on constitution-related matters, they are human beings. Mm-hmm. Are we saying that once these human beings make decisions, there can be no error for them to revisit them, even if it's at the highest level of the Concord?
You know, that question must be asked to the framers of the law. Mm-hmm. And if these judges were really keen to address this matter, they should have gone to Parliament for them to amend the Act, so that the law itself is the one that gives them the power to revisit. Now, they took a Vasco da Gama voyage, went to different countries, and they were selecting countries where they were finding that the law allows them. How come they didn't go to jurisdictions where the law does not allow, just like it is in Zambia? Because my argument is that, look, it's not every jurisdiction that gives power to the Constitutional Court to revisit its decisions. There are some jurisdictions where the Constitutional Court is bound by its decision, and they have no power to revisit. Why didn't they choose those countries? So they could have said, look, in other countries we're also not allowed.
But as former Justice Minister, you also agree that as per practice, when rulings or cases are being decided upon, it is just traditional practice to cite judicial precedents of cases and how matters have been resolved, similar matters have been resolved. So is it wrong for them to cite these matters, Roe versus Wade, as per an example, the issue of the Kenyan, because these are high-level cases.
I can assure you that if you go and ask a third-year student at UNILAS, a student of law, to do some research, they will also come and tell you that this jurisdiction is exactly like the Zambian Constitutional Court Act, that the Constitutional Court has no power to revisit its decisions. And once the law is made in that way, that's it, it's the law. You can't just wake up and say, now I'll go and compare with countries that permit. And because there are countries that permit, therefore, our law also must be broken.
But Honorable Lubinda, you yourself, being a legal scholar, I'm arguing on the basis that when cases are being decided upon, that is why you see that even in the opening, they'll refer to what statutes, what cases are being used to foment what the ratio discidendi of how the ruling is coming upon.
You know, you refer to case law, you refer to other countries in the confines of what the law empowers you to do. If the law says, sorry, Bwana, you are not allowed.
But case law is law.
Yes.
Case law is law as well.
Yes, but look, case law does not override the law. Case law must support the law. Here they were acting ultra vires. They themselves at 8.6 said, we don't have the power. The Supreme Court, yes, it has the power, but the Constitutional Court doesn't have the power. You don't go fishing around to clothe yourself with a suit that you don't own. No. You can button it. Yes, you're allowed to button it and unbutton it. But first of all, you must own it. If you don't own it, don't use case law.
So the interesting aspect is, you say they've made a judgment that is ultra-vast because they do not have the law. But as...
And secondly, even outside having the power to do so, they also do not even give justification for doing so.
But as per legal procedure, this is a ruling and a judgment that has been entered, and so it becomes precedence. What next for this country?
You know, I told you that I said on Monday that they had opened the Pandora box. All right? They had opened the Pandora box. Now, let's assume, and I'm just assuming, let's assume somebody says, this judgment doesn't read well. That a person who you say was qualified in 2021 is not qualified in 2026. I would like you to revisit this part of your decision, that he qualified in 2021 and goes back to court. Do they have any reason to refuse that person entry? Do they? Because it's a completely new matter. Do they have the power?
I think it was part of the question whether he was eligible in 2021 in the Chizombe petition.
Exactly. That was also the question the 3 times before. It was the same question the 3 times before. And they said, we have the jurisdiction to revisit it. They now have the jurisdiction to revisit it even further. That's the absurdity of this judgment.
Are you
That's
going
the
to,
absurdity of this matter.
So, with the establishment of what you're saying, that the Constitutional Court has got no legal power to revisit its own matter, and you're saying that they went ultra vires in this particular ruling, what are the legal options available for you now?
8.16 was written by they themselves.
What is okay. Your legal option now going forward?
The position, Mr. Mwansa, is that they opened a can of worms, and they must be ready to handle that. That's the legal ramification of this. They can't shut the door anymore. They have thrown away stare decisis. They have thrown away the principle of res judicata. They have thrown away the law that says, Constitutional Court, you have no power to revisit your decision. They have exposed themselves in a very dangerous manner.
But being a court of finality, it is the same judges that then you have to deal with, the same bench. Are you going to then file in fresh motions, not just for Edgar Lungu, but on the aspect of illegality based on this decision?
It is the same court that made 3 previous decisions. Same court. And yet, it allowed itself to hear the matter a 4th time. And I told you, the only change that has been seen is the change of faces. But the court is the same.
And again, it gets back to my question of asking the tenure of the judges, because this keeps on happening. We had a constitution of 1991, amended in 1996, and those specific amendments, others would argue that they were strictly to amend to bar KK then from contesting in 1996. The parentage clause was added. And again, we see tinkering of the Constitution all the time towards, an election. We attempted with Bill 10. You were Justice Minister. I interviewed you here. It was the other way around. You said, this is a good thing. The UPND said, this is not. They're trying to work around this thing so that they sell through an election. And now it's the same. We're having another attempt to bite at the Constitution. So away from the Edgar Lungu, do we only always amend or try to tamper with the Constitution to suit the power in office at that point? How do we protect the laws and the judiciary?
At least the PF is vindicated. And I quite often watch the clip that you had here with Hakainde Hichilema. Because it's also very telling of the person. You interviewed him here, and he said, what is wrong with it? Remember? What is wrong with it? The Zambian people must have the power. That's what you were saying. Eh? We mustn't amend it. Today, he goes to court, to Parliament, and says, do you know, because of this provision, I can actually delay elections for 8 years. What's good for the goose must be good for the gander. The fact that he is coming back to where we were in 2020 shows you that we were coming up with amendments that were good for society. UPND used that just to vilify us, to make themselves appear like they were the best people. And now they are picking bits and pieces of Bill 10 and attempting to amend the Constitution. So the truth of the matter, Mr. Mwansa, is that yes, I agree that there's been instances where constitutions have been amended with particular individuals in mind. And the KK case is a very good classic case. That was very clear. This was targeting KK. But when we tried to amend the law ourselves, we were not targeting any particular person.
Do you feel that the suspension and removal of the 3 judges that were then appointed by President Edgar Lungu subsequently saw a shift in what the JCC had already decided upon, subsequently saw a shift that the court vacates its own matter, giving the aspect that there's an exception in the res judicata principle, there's now per incuriam, Is this politically motivated to bar Edgar Lungu?
You raise a very important point. There is this constitutional matter in court, huge debate, and you decide midway, after the court has started hearing this matter, you decide that we're going to throw out 3 judges. And when you look at the judges, you see something common in them, that the 3 are the ones who were in the forefront of ruling the 3 times previously. And now they are taken to the JCC. And the JCC itself, like the Concord, donates to itself power to revisit its own decisions. Because those 3 judges had been taken to the JCC before and they were cleared. But this time, again, because of change of faces at the JCC, they are found culpable. So you can see that this is all political.
So you're saying it's political and it's abuse. So if what you're saying is indeed what it is, how then do we protect the integrity of our laws, that the Constitution should be respected irregardless of whether given Lubinda or Costa Mwansa is president then? Does the presidency then indeed have so much power, like has been said in the previous constitutional reforms, even in the current Act number 2 of 2016? Does the president have so much power?
I'll say to you that you rarely hear presidents, especially presidents, celebrating a court judgment. You rarely. The reason is they ought to be superintendents over the interest of everybody. If I am arrested, it mustn't excite the president, because I'm a citizen of Zambia. Now, when you hear the president celebrating a judgment, you should know that he has an interest. And I still insist that if there is one individual who is a beneficiary of this judgment, it is other individual.
But granted,
so it is political.
But granted, if that may be the situation, Honourable Lubinda, you are still not answering my question. Regardless of HH being in power or whether this is an attempt to stop Edgar Lungu, how do we protect our Constitution? How do we protect the independence and autonomy of judges? Because like I've rightfully pointed out, 96, the suspension of judges, you're making all these allegations. The president appoints judges, the president appoints the JCC, the report of the JCC, according to our current legal provisions, have to go to the president. So, regardless of who is in State House, the question is, how do we expect these individuals to make decisions against the appointing authority if they are not protected? Because there have been attempts, even in amending our Constitution, and it's very spelled out in now the current Constitution, the issue of trying to protect tenure, that the National Assembly or Parliament will ratify the appointment of these judges. Is that enough to protect them from interference or political interests that you talk about?
If there's anything, Costa, that can be said to be the only thing to come out of Hakainde's presidency, it is the realization of how our institutions of governance, how our Constitution is so vulnerable to abuse. Hakainde has shown us that really our Constitution can be abused. Really, our institutions of Parliament can be abused. Institutions of governance, such as Parliament, can be abused, such as the Judiciary can be abused. That's the only thing that Zambia will benefit from Hakainde's presidency. And therefore, very important question you ask, and this is a question that must exercise all Zambians' minds. What should we do to ensure that we protect the sanctity of the judiciary, the sanctity of Parliament, from the abuse? Because Hakainde might not be the last of such people to lead this country. So let's benefit from what he's doing to further develop our jurisdiction and to develop our sovereignty, to develop our constitutionalism, and to develop our democracy.
Yeah. But again, privilege of the fact that you were Justice Minister, there are so many calls, and it's a well-known fact. You go whether to the National Constitution Commission or whatever, or a Constitution Review Commission, citizens have been very clear that there's so much power that is deposed in the so-called presidency. Why are you politicians afraid? Because you tinker around under this administration, for example, in attempts to try to show that the powers of a presidency are being stripped, you remove only things like defamation of the president and so on and so forth. But it's these critical issues, appointing of judges. The president is commander-in-chief. He appoints the IG, he appoints whoever and has the right to hire and fire. So there will always be abuse and the political interests that you talk about.
And we may not have seen these glaring challenges previously because we didn't have people who were abusing the law. We didn't have people who were abusing their position against the citizens. Now that we have one who has done it, it is time for you and me. It is time for Zambians to improve things so that we avoid such
So you agree, but even if it's fashionable now, it suits you because UPND is in power, you're now in your position. I can give an example. Before the ruling in the Bumpy Kapalasa case, when President Lungu was in power, he spoke on a podium at Solwezi saying, as judges consider their ruling, they need or ought to be careful that they don't behave like their colleagues in Kenya. And many accused him that such sentiments were prejudicial to the extent that they were actually telling what the judges should decide on.
You know, had President Lungu gone ahead to abuse his authority by dismissing judges as though you are dismissing maids, I think that Zambians then, when we were doing Bill 10, should have made submissions to change that position. But he never did. He may have made that statement, but you didn't hear any judge being dismissed under sinister circumstances. But now that it has happened, now we know that, yes, it's true when he says there is lacuna. There is lacuna in our law because it allows him, and he has done it. He has abused institutions of governance. So please, let's take a leaf from this 5 years that he's been president to make things better and to tighten the law
like I keep
for the
saying,
sake of our country.
It would be so good for you as an opposition PF to really say that the Constitution and the courts have been abused only under Hichilema. But I keep on asking how we can protect the sanctity, the autonomy and the independence of such institutions and such laws, regardless of who is being there. I can give a lot of examples. Under President Michael Sata's term, for example, when you look at the qualifications and the tenure of judges, we had a Chief Justice who had retired and was in that capacity illegally. And the law was very clear, but President Sata decided to still keep her on.
No. You put the facts right. That woman was acting Chief Justice. She was not sworn in as Chief Justice. Because of that same provision.
Yes.
Because of Parliament saying, no, we can't ratify
If you let me finish, but the President still insisted on the fact that she kept in her position, irregardless of the fact that the law didn't allow. Yourself last week, you were quoting, I watched your press briefing where you mocked US President Joe Biden of abusing his authority, of pardoning Hunter Biden. Again, this is what I'm talking about. Donald Trump himself made sure that when he was in office, he had to put judges that were Republican-friendly, especially on the aspects of overturning the abortion issue of Roe versus Wade. And so, when I look at it, I'm still asking the same question, is when we make laws for ourselves, why do we, when we know that individuals will have so much power to simply overturn what the citizens give themselves?
We've already agreed on that, Costa, that you and I and all Zambians must look at how to strengthen our institutions of governance so that they are protected from abuse. We did not know until now that the power of the president and the influence that they exert can go to the extent where members of parliament are thrown out of parliament like little children in a kindergarten. We didn't know that until now. Now that we know, what should we do? Correct it. Make it better. Now that we know that a president can be so divisive as to just fire judges, and even deny them an opportunity to be heard by the court, it is our duty to make sure that we change our laws for the better. And if you ask me, what should we change? My answer would be exactly what we did with Bill 10. Consult the people. And the people now have experienced, they have realized that this can be abused. Initially, we were just talking about it. It's open, but we didn't see the reality. Now we have faced the reality. Now, if you give the people the opportunity, use the process that we use for Bill 10, or have a total referendum, I'm sure the people will point to these things and say, let us improve this because this is not right.
So from last week, I'm sure, obviously, in the heat of the moment, you responded. And like you're saying here, that this ruling and judgment for you has opened a Pandora box and a can of worms to the issues of so many questions that arise. What was very succinct in your remarks at that press briefing was this issue now of Plan B and Edgar still being on the ballot box, and obviously a number of reactions from experts, legal technocrats saying, what does given mean Plan B? As long as it's anything legal, then there's no Plan B. Cornelius Muto says, your Plan B then is just anarchy and mayhem because legally the Court has finally proven that Edgar is not eligible. So could you share with me tonight, what is this Plan B that makes you so confident that Edgar will be on the ballot in 2026?
To answer that question, let me say, out of what is in the heart, the mouth speaks. So when you hear people ranting and saying this Plan B is illegal, it is because that is what is in their mind. Okay, that's what is in their mind. If I said to you, Costa, I'll see you outside. If you're a person who's disposed to violence, you immediately say, he wants to beat me up. But I might just be saying, I'll see you outside because I want to give you a mango. Right? So those who are saying this is Plan B is illegal, it is because they themselves are a product of illegality. For them, when you just say, I'm going to make sure that I attain what I want, then they think it's illegal because they themselves use violence and illegal activities to achieve what they want.
What is Plan B? Is it a secret? Is it legal? What is Plan B?
Look, the person I didn't think understood football, made a very good analogy when they were asking me about Plan B. They said, no, wait a minute. If you're playing football and by halftime you're trailing, the coach will take you to the dressing room and tell you a new strategy. The coach will be foolish to go to the opposite team to tell them, this is my strategy. Why should I tell you my strategy?
So it's
why should I tell Hakainde my strategy?
You're not telling Hakainde. The question here is...
Where am I telling?
You're telling the Zambian people.
I don't want to tell them. No.
You don't want to tell the potential voters?
No. I said to them...
Just hold on a second. You held a briefing on Monday before the ruling.
Right.
Claiming that for you, the outcome was already predetermined.
Right.
So you knew and believed, because in fact, in your post-briefing on Wednesday, you laughed to say you would have been very surprised, actually, if the judgment went the other way. To you, you said, actually, you'd have been wondering, what do they have up their sleeves? What are they planning?
Exactly.
So meaning you had already gone to the dressing room, you knew what was coming your way.
Yes.
So out of public interest,
we knew right from the start.
Do you have Plan B when you knew right from the start, or you're now just formulating Plan B? Or there's no plan, absolutely?
The reason we have Plan B...
Or there's no plan?
No. The reason we have Plan B is because we saw this coming.
But why should Plan B be a secret when you have got PF sympathizers, when you have got would-be voters who you say are disappointed with the performance of this government that has not performed according to their promises? Why would you hide Plan B?
Are you sure that a coach will go into the stadium and tell all the fans, because you are our supporters, this is our strategy? They will not do that. They will go and share the plan with those who are going to execute it. And as you become relevant in the plan, you will be hooked in. We might even hook you in as Diamond TV without you knowing that you're being hooked into Plan B. If you see what I mean. We have a team, small little team, very tiny. And here I can disclose that please stop bothering members of the Central Committee. Because even among us members of the Central Committee,
Plan B,
some of the members of the Central Committee are not privy to what Plan B entails.
So Plan B is a preserve of a few
because we want
is
to
a
make
preserve
sure
of a few privileged individuals.
Exactly.
If that is what is being said of this, Plan B, again quoting you in your reaction press briefing, are you so determined that whether legal or illegal ways, you still have to put Edgar Lungu on the ballot? Because quoting you, you said whether it's to do Mingalato, and I believe Mingalato is never legal, we will go the extreme, whether it's Mingalato, to ensure that Edgar is on the ballot in 2026.
Unfortunately, Hakainde, is associated with very bad things. It is he who turned the word Mingalato to become a bad word. When he said, Tachinja Mingalato, Tizama Koma Pakosi, then people think Mingalato is illegality. No, Mingalato is just strategy. And at no one point did I say we're going to engage in any illegal activities. No. I even challenged those who are saying these are illegal. I said, arrest me. Come, I'm ready to be arrested. If you believe that what I'm saying is illegal, come and arrest me. But sorry, I'm not willing to share my plan B with you. I'm going to share it only with those who are relevant in executing plan B. And as the number grows, more and more, as the work goes on, more and more people will be required to come in. They will not even know that I'm being brought into plan B. They will just be told, Bwana, you are a member of the Central Committee, this is your assignment.
Are you still telling me tonight that as far as you are concerned, your candidate for 2026 is Edgar Lungu?
He was eligible in 2021 according to those 7 judges. They must explain why he all of a sudden has become ineligible in 2026.
You're not answering my question.
I'm answering your question.
I'm asking you, are you telling me tonight that irrespective of this ruling, your candidate as Patriotic Front will be Edgar Lungu on the 2026 ballot?
Both on Monday...
And your plan B involves Edgar Lungu?
Both on Monday and Tuesday. On Monday I said there were 3 candidates. On Tuesday I said there were 4 candidates. And the 3 candidates carry one and the same person and one and the same name. The 4 candidates carry one and the same name and one and the same person. Edgar Lungu is the 2026 Tonse Alliance candidate.
Be that the case, let me go now to issues away from this ruling. There's so much happening within the former ruling party in terms of legal battles, and that's why you point a finger at President Hakainde Hichilema being the reason behind these factions. But as experienced politicians yourselves, you should have seen this coming. There's so much fragmentation in your party, some MPs pulling one other way, calling for President Lungu to basically adhere to this judgment. You've got some of your seats, taken away, and so there's just so much fraction happening in the PF. As Vice President, are you confident that even with this, your Plan B, you go in with a united front? There's so much confusion.
PF is a democratic party. And it is not the first time that we're having all these court issues and so on. You recall that way back 2019, no, before we even formed government, you recall that we kicked out 22 members of parliament. We threw them out of the party and we spent a lot of time in court. So this is not new to us. Okay, and we accept it because we're a popular party. Parties that are under dictatorship, you will not hear things like that because people are just crushed. Parties that are run by one person, you will not hear things like this because everybody looks at the leader as though they were a god. Okay, for us we are democratic, and because we are such an attractive party, you hear everybody wanting to be president. Some of them become so ambitious to an extent that they become abused by those who want to destroy the party.
If you say you're democratic, I remember interviewing you here before even the 100,000 kwachas were paid, and at that time I kept on asking you this question: is Edgar Lungu retired or not? You said right now he's in retirement, I'm acting vice president, a convention. This is what you told me.
Yes.
But if you're such a democratic party, it's taken you almost 3 years now, 3.5 years, since you were kicked out of power, to really put your house in order.
Our house is...
I was listening to you again in your last press briefing, and you were saying there are some among us here, you were pointing at Honorable Mundubile to say he wanted to contest and so on, but everybody has decided to rally against, Edgar Lungu. And those tendencies undemocratic, why not take that decision to a convention so that Edgar Lungu becomes resoundingly the preferred candidate, rather than given Lubinda, a few others who like Edgar Lungu, imposing and saying, it's not that we don't have leadership quality, but we're only going for Edgar. Choice 1 to 5 is Edgar, while others have paid wanting to contest. That's undemocratic.
Lest you confuse the viewers, let me correct you. We last held our convention in May 2021. It was at that convention where Edgar Chagwa Lungu was elected president of the Patriotic Front. And in accordance with our constitution, the person who's elected president of the party becomes the presidential candidate.
But this is a man who left after he lost.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. He retired and said, I'm going into retirement. Then I acted, and we put a program in motion to have a mid-term convention to replace Edgar. Before that could happen, confusion reigned and Edgar had to come back. The moment that he came back meant that the convention of 2021 holds. The next convention, Mr. Mwansa, is 2026.
So others are asking a question.
Now, wait a minute.
Others are asking a question, Vice President Lubinda.
Let me answer your question.
Is Edgar the only savior?
No, let me
answer. Is Edgar the only alpha and omega, the only person that can unite, the only person that can take the PF to victory? Can only be Edgar?
Let me answer your question. I've answered you now on Edgar's position as president of the Patriotic Front. He will hold that position until May 2026 or sooner, if we decide to hold the convention sooner. Okay? We in the Central Committee, not the general membership, but we in the Central Committee have agreed that we shall sponsor Edgar Chagwa Lungu to recontest his position as president of the Patriotic Front at the next convention, so that he then also contests the presidency of Zambia. Is he the only one? No, far from it. Far from it. However, we can see how he's making others spend sleepless nights. And you have a striker. Huh? You have a striker and it's time for a penalty. And you know that this guy has scored before. Then you go and take a novice that because he's also a striker, let's use him. No, we are not practicing here. This is not practice period. This is a matter of winning elections.
Finally, you as a Central Committee, based on what is existing before the court, I know you don't like me using this word, you're on one end, the PF, and there's other office bearers based on what the court is holding right now. So which PF is Edgar Lungu going to stand on as things stand? And I'm asking this in the basis that you're currently a fragmented party. There's so much confusion. I hear my brother Mal Sampa, again, reacting to this judgment, patting and saying Edgar Lungu should be the one. But this is the same Mal Sampa that held a convention which you people called illegal, and you're in this mess because of such members.
Precisely. We're in this mess, Costa, because of Hagainde Hijidema. No one else.
No, but Mal Sampa held that convention. He's your member. It's not Hakainde Hichilema. The courts are there. You now have Ngonga as the Secretary General.
You have a very influential TV station. Wait a minute.
I'm asking the question.
I want to answer your question.
As things stand, you have one Ngonga as your Secretary General of the party. So it's very simple. Which PF is Edgar going to contest on in 2023? Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
You have a very influential TV station here. Tell me a day when the state decided we're going to protect Diamond TV will send police free of charge. When? The Mao Sampa saga, full riot police. They're the ones who are even conducting those so-called elections. Police. On an Independence Day, on the day when Zambia was playing host to Tanzanian president. What happened? Television, ZNBC, outside broadcasting, had to wait for Hakainde to finish delivering his speech at State House and moved to Mulungushi Conference Center. And that's when that meeting started. Can't you see the footsteps of Hakainde? The same night, fingerprints are lifted by the police. Next Monday, they are at the Registrar of Societies. We go to court and we say, please, court, can you answer the question? This man, that meeting he held, does it qualify to elect a president in accordance with our constitution? Here it is. The court is sitting on its laurels. To date. Why? I suppose it's because they are worried that their jobs are on the line. They may follow their brothers and sisters.
This is why I ask you a question. If you have no confidence in what's happening in the court, if you believe that as long as President HH is president and he's manipulating, which PF then will Edgar stand on?
I've already answered that. There is no other PF than the PF where I am vice president. But Costa, you are sure that you can agree that a person comes in your house and says...
I'm only asking
No, I'm asking
because,
also.
Because you have gone, for example, to Kawambwa, where again you said this by-election is illegal, but you've decided, you were saying, all of us after this briefing need to go and support Edgar campaign.
Yes.
But there's no PF participating in that by-election.
All the people you see there are members of TONSE, and PF members are there. TONSE is an alliance.
But PF,
TONSE agreed that the anchor party is the Patriotic Front.
Even if it's not on the ballot?
We didn't have to be on the ballot. We decided that we are going to use the new Congress party. Why? Because we know that Hakainde would, when he just hears the name PF, he gets sick.
And that's plan B in 2026. PF doesn't need to be on the ballot, but Tonse will find a mungala to make sure.
I have told you that Edgar Lungu is contesting. Okay? And we have an alliance.
With or without PF on the ballot?
With or without PF on the ballot, we are fielding Edgar Chagwa Lungu as a PF candidate. With or without PF on the ballot.
Vice President Lubinda, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much. And please, whenever you have the opportunity, say to the people, it is their strategy. And we have no business poking our noses in their strategy. Call it what you may. But when you do, be careful not to expose the figment of your mind. Those who are calling it illegal are just telling the Zambian people that they are nothing but illegal. They have nothing but illegal thoughts in their heads. For us, Bwana, it's plan B, and it's plan B that is going to save this country. Plan B that will make sure that we don't have anymore a person who sits here on television with you and tells you there is no rain in Dubai, but there's electricity 24/7. Here there is rain. What is the difference? Leadership. And then you are given the opportunity by God, just 1 year, you have voted Bola.
Honorable Lubinda, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
That wraps up tonight's edition of Costa. My guest has been the Vice President of the Edgar Chagwa Lungu PF, Honorable Given Lubinda. We've been discussing the Court ruling and obviously the much anticipated or talked about Plan B. Let's wait and see. Remember, it's Diamond TV online as well as Diamond Media Zambia on Facebook. It's Diamond TV Zambia on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.
Costa was brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.